All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack a historical event that completely, and I mean absolutely completely, reshaped our understanding of natural disasters. Today, we're traveling all the way back to the year 1925 to examine the sheer destruction, the terrifying scale, and the lasting legacy of America's deadliest tornado. I mean, think for a second about what happens today when a severe storm approaches. Our phones buzz like crazy with emergency alerts, meteorologists track the radar on our screens in real time, and we've got sirens wailing across neighborhoods telling us to take cover. But back in 1925, weather forecasting was basically in its infancy. We're talking no tornado warning systems whatsoever, no alerts, no sirens, zero. People were just going about their daily lives with complete and utter vulnerability to the skies above them. Section 1. A normal spring morning.
Section 2. The Monster Awakens.
So, March 18, 1925, actually began just like any other day across these small towns in Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. You had farmers heading out into their fields, kids were sitting right there in their classrooms, and factory workers were just clocking in for their morning shifts. And sure, the sky looked a little cloudy, but honestly, no one expected anything unusual. There was this completely false sense of security. But far to the west, totally out of sight from the public, nature was quietly brewing an absolute disaster. By early afternoon down in southeastern Missouri, this massive tornado formed. And guys, this wasn't just your standard storm. Listen to this quote from an eyewitness who was there that day. A huge black wall stretching across the horizon. When we think of tornadoes today, we usually picture that classic narrow funnel shape, right? Well, that is definitely not what this was. This storm appeared to literally swallow the entire sky. It was just this massive, creeping wall of darkness.
And the true terror of this situation really came down to its speed. It was moving at nearly 70 miles per hour. Let that sink in. This massive black wall was moving at literal highway speeds. So without any sirens and with a storm taking up the entire horizon, moving that fast, well, it gave people almost no time to escape. You couldn't outrun it, and you could barely even react to it.
Section 3. A path of destruction. As this massive wall of wind began tearing through the landscape, the immediate devastation was just unimaginable. The unstoppable violence of nature was fully unleashed on these vulnerable communities. We're talking barns being thrown into the air like they were made of tissue paper, massive, deeply rooted trees ripped cleanly from the earth. Even heavy steel railroad tracks were physically twisted and mangled by the sheer force of the winds. And perhaps most terrifyingly of all, entire homes disappeared within seconds. Literally, in the blink of an eye, there was nothing left behind but bare foundations. Let's map out exactly how this unfolded, because it's wild. Most tornadoes, they touch down and then lift back up rather quickly, but definitely not this one. It started its relentless path in southeastern Missouri. Then, as it crossed into the middle of its journey in Illinois, it somehow became even more powerful, scoring direct hits on these small, unsuspecting towns. And then it just kept going. It continued its destruction all the way into Indiana, a relentless 3-hour journey. This incredible, continuous path across 3 separate states is exactly why it earned the infamous name, the Tri-State Tornado. For the folks caught in the middle of this 3-hour nightmare, the sensory experience was truly unimaginable. Survivors later recalled hearing, and this is a direct quote, a deafening roar that sounded like hundreds of trains rushing toward them at once. Just try to imagine hearing that sound heading your way. The sky turned nearly pitch black as dust, debris, and heavy rain completely choked the air. Families desperately searching for shelter suddenly found themselves trapped as buildings literally fell in around them. Schools collapsed while classes were still actively in session. And in all that pitch-black chaos, flying wood, bricks, and metal essentially became deadly projectiles. One of the absolute hardest-hit communities was the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois. Entire neighborhoods were completely flattened in a matter of minutes. And the destruction was so absolute, so complete, that when rescuers finally arrived afterward, they struggled to even recognize the streets. It's like a giant eraser just went over the map. Almost every single familiar landmark had vanished. The vibrant town they knew had simply been wiped away. Section 4. The devastating aftermath. Finally, after 3 relentless hours, the storm weakened, revealing a landscape that was almost impossible to comprehend. And the historic toll? It's staggering. A duration of over 3 hours, a continuous path carved over 200 miles long, which completely cements it as the longest track tornado in U.S. history. And the human cost is just heartbreaking. More than 690 people lost their lives, thousands more were badly injured, and tens of thousands were left completely homeless. Entire communities were just wiped off the map. It's a profoundly devastating tragedy.
Section 5. The Legacy of 1925.
So what came of all this? Well, this disaster served as a brutal, nationwide wake-up call. It forcefully exposed just how utterly unprepared the country was for severe weather, and it forced a massive, massive shift in how we approach meteorology. Step 1, in the years that followed, meteorologists were pushed to drastically improve storm forecasting. Step 2, we saw the vital development of emergency communication systems, so that word of a storm could actually spread faster than the storm itself. And step 3, effective tornado warning procedures were created and gradually refined. Those alerts and sirens we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer, they are the direct, tangible result of the incredibly hard lessons learned on that dark day in 1925.
Today, the tri-state tornado is still remembered as the deadliest in American history. It truly catalyzed the technology that has vastly improved our ability to predict dangerous weather and save lives. But, it leaves us with a pretty provocative question to think about. While technology has improved our predictions, will the sheer power of nature always remain impossible to fully control? It is definitely a humbling reminder of our place in the natural world. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.